Hey, good evening. We thank you for joining us again tonight. We're doing our Pastoring in the Pandemic Part 2. Last week, we kind of addressed the issues that we have dealt with pastoring during this pandemic. And tonight, we wanted to kind of focus a little bit more time on those issues, but then go to the issue of reentry and what that will look like for all of our churches. And so tonight, we're joined by Pastor Reuben Spate from Greater Destiny International Ministries, and we thank you, Pastor Reuben, for being with us, and Pastor Craig Johnson from the Lighthouse Church, and Pastor Chris Watson, thank you again from Grace Point for being with us. And last week, we got a lot of response back and just so many positive things, and so we wanted to kind of do a part 2 and just talk about what church is going to look like going forward. So that will be our topic for tonight, and we appreciate you joining us. And so, again, I wanted to have an opening question that we all kind of looked at, and I wanted to base it out of 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 22. The Apostle Paul is telling the church, he says, "To the weak I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some." And so looking at that verse, I thought, boy, that is so relative to some of the things that we've been dealing with, to what we have to become to minister in a pandemic. And so, Pastor Reuben, I wanted to start with you tonight and say, do you feel like you have had to adjust yourself to minister during this time? And if so, what were some of the adjustments that you think you have had to make? Like Paul said, to the weak I became weak, and to win the weak. And so what are some things that maybe you had to adjust to during this pandemic, and what those adjustments look like?
What have we had to adjust to? Well, of course, the whole idea of, ministering to an empty room and realizing more that I think we were so accustomed to having people in the room and talking directly and interacting with people from that aspect, now interacting with this camera. And I'm a talk back preacher, I'm going to tell your neighbor, pastor, that type of thing. And I kind of pull from what I'm feeling in the room as far as, how I deliver, whatever the case may be. So now looking at this camera, there's not many amens that come back. And if they are, I don't hear them. And so, just making sure that, we're connecting with the people. And so that's been the biggest thing, making that adjustment, saying, they're listening, even though you don't hear that interaction in between, and continue to just deliver the word, because at the end of the day, it's the word that's going to make the difference in their lives. And so by just doing what God is leading us to do, becoming more like the young lady told me, looking at the camera more, I'm trying to do that more. But as a result, I'm so encouraged, because when you hear of people getting saved, by you making those adjustments, understanding that the way we've typically did ministry, of course, like you have your praise and worship session, then you have so many songs you're saying here, then you move into your offering, all of that is kind of thrown out the window. Right. And I thank God that it's given us ways to adjust, because the message is still the same. Right. But our methods have to change, and they will change to some extent, but God is yet being glorified, lives are being changed. So for me, it's adjusting to the whole watching the camera, understand that there are people that are watching. The word is still changing their lives, and being okay with not doing what we have normally
always done.
Yeah, always done as church.
Well,
yeah.
Great. That's a great word. Pastor Craig, what do you think? As Paul said, he had to adjust his life to minister during that time. What do you think adjustments maybe you've had to make in your own life during this time to minister?
Yeah. Appreciate that, brother. Such a relevant text, because there are certain aspects of us that we enjoy. There are certain parts of me that I really enjoy, and I hope others enjoy that part too,
right?
Because this is what I really like. But I think for me is my delivery. It is had to be more of a conversation than it is a traditional preaching environment. Because I got to thinking one Sunday, I said, you know what? Now I'm in this sanctuary with just a media crew, and they're watching with their bedclothes on, slippers on. They're in a casual position, in a casual area, casual mindset. And I say, I think I need to adjust to more of a conversation than preaching at them. So I had to relax in a lot of ways, even with the way I dressed. I just had to, I wasn't too traditional in dressing anyway, but I really had to relax and become more casual as it relates to how I delivered the word. So for me, that was a bit different. And like Pastor Spake, I'm that guy. I feed off the the responses, call and response, touch your neighbor, turn around and tell somebody. That's just an environment that I'm used to. But it had to become more of a conversation. A lot of the fat had to be trimmed off. A lot that I would say, that would help us and assist us in certain environments was no longer there. And I had to become my favorite preacher. I told somebody this. I said, I had to become my favorite preacher because nobody was in the room to say how well I preached.
Yeah.
Amen.
So I didn't have that validation. I didn't have anybody after service that said, hey, good word, Pastor. Hey, I really enjoyed it. It really blessed me. It was just and cut.
Right.
And that was it. So I had to become my favorite preacher, which means I had to critique myself. I had to go back and watch the live feed. I had to say, okay, I need to get rid of that. I shouldn't have said that. Okay, that was too long. Okay, maybe you stayed on that a little bit too long. And so I had to evaluate myself, critique myself in order so I could become my favorite preacher.
That's really
and
good.
tell myself amen. So that's an adjustment that I had to make.
Man, that is great. That is great. Pastor Chris, what do you think? How have you maybe had to adjust during this time? As Paul said, to some I had to be weak, but the overall goal is to win them all. What do you think you've had to adjust with?
Well, obviously, I think everybody who's, teaching, preaching online is, making an adjustment when you're speaking to a camera. It's much different, whether it's a vocal response or it's just looking at somebody's face, thinking, did I connect with them? Did they understand what I'm saying? Because you don't get any of that feedback.
Right,
so,
right.
I'm probably by nature a teacher. And so as I'm walking through that, when you don't see, because you can tell just by looking at a person's facial expression, they're tracking with you or like you've totally lost them.
Right.
So not having that, I think that's a struggle for anybody, especially if you're not, all of us are not TV evangelists and, used to that. So I think that's an adjustment. I'll tell you, one area for me, it's been a major adjustment is just staff. How do I lead them, remotely? That was a new challenge. I had for about a year and a half before that, started looking into, hey, could we work remotely and listen to a few things? And so then, as we got into it, when the only people who stayed in the office were me and my administrative assistant, everybody else worked remotely. So how do I communicate with them on a regular basis? How do I judge what they're doing? Because there's all of us are thinking, well, they're at home. I hope they're working. Because when they're at the office, you're measuring even subconsciously activity. Mm-hmm. So it had to be moving toward, for me, thinking I'm not going to measure activity because I can't see it. I'm going to have to measure outcome. So, since we're online, so I have to watch what's going online, those sorts of things. So for me, that was an adjustment. And I think, if we ever had a situation where we were to go back into a situation where we're working remotely, because we're not now, that would be easier to do because now I have a better idea of what that would look like, what that would feel like, what we need to do. Because I think everybody was just thrust in that moment. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I would say, obviously the communication aspect, but even the communication, the celebration, because whenever we meet as a staff, we always start off with a celebration, what's going well, and then we talk about evaluation, what needs to improve. And so as we do that, and they're not there, throughout the week, how do you do that? So then it began to look at outcomes. And so that was, to me, a big adjustment. And I'm a people person. I think this is another adjustment for me. I like people, and if you ever heard the 5 love languages, probably one of mine is, my top is a physical touch. If you're around me a lot, I'll touch you usually. That sounds really weird saying that, but like not being able to hug somebody or to, put your hand on a brother's back, bro hugs. We just haven't been able to do that. I would catch myself seeing people when I had to go out and shaking their hands. I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. And so those are some adjustments I think that for me just were awkward. And some things I learned. It's been good because I think it's forced all of us to rethink communication, rethink leadership, So it's been a really good thing, although at times frustrating.
Very hard. Yeah, to me, we all being pastor, we want as many people to gather with us as we can get. I mean, we want to be that pastor and we want to encourage you, be in church with us. For me, the big adjustment going forward is maybe not being pushy, because everybody may not be at the same stage to come back. And I can't be expecting that there's somebody who's ready to come back and they're all engaged, versus there's still people out there who are very concerned about their health conditions.
Sure.
And it doesn't need to be my decision to say, hey, you got to come back. It really needs to be the Holy Spirit leading them and letting them feel safe in that environment, because I've got to adjust to that. And as pastors, that's not always easy for us, because we want everybody every Sunday to be in church.
Right.
I don't care. I mean, down deep, we can put a smile and say, yeah, well, I know we all need a break. But at the end of the day, we really want everybody here at church. And so now we're having to be patient and say, we'll begin to work this process out. And for me, that is a tough adjustment, just to be patient and believe that, hey, even though the sheep may not be all gathered, but we all coming back to eat again together. And so that's a big adjustment that I think going forward. I wanted to ask the next question. There have been many surprises over the last 10 weeks, but what would you say, has there been something really big that has surprised you out of all this? And whatever it is, whether it be ministry, people, whatever. Is there a big surprise that you think that you have come out of this and thought, I thought I knew everything, but now this caught me by surprise? Pastor Craig, could I lead off with you and say, what do you think maybe have surprised you, or learned something out of this that may have surprised you through this?
I think this might be some of the other brothers' answer to this as well, but the results, the impact has really surprised me. Because I think we started making preparations coming into this thing when it relates to finances, just a lot of things that we thought were going to take a dive. The results in ministry, the effectiveness, impact in ministry, reaching people. So the big surprise for me was just the opposite. Everything increased.
Man.
And if you think about it, just to be realistic, as we planned before we went into this, I don't think nobody really expected that. I don't think anybody really expected, okay, we're getting ready to close the doors. We're getting ready to do ministry different. We're going to speak into a camera. I don't think anybody really anticipated the impact and the increase in everything.
That we could grow.
Even in that.
Yeah.
And so that goes back, I think, to what you said earlier. When we allow the Holy Spirit to make those adjustments in our lives that need to be made. And when we submit to those adjustments, we are supposed to see that impact anytime you submit to God. So I think that's, to me, the biggest surprise was, man, people are getting saved in their bathrobe. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They got the shower shoes on and they're getting saved.
And the word,
and
getting to them.
From finances, all that stuff. So that's the biggest surprise to me. And it shouldn't be. But because we shouldn't put anything past God.
Right.
It shouldn't be, but I think we have become so conditioned to what we've established and what we're used to we expect certain results to come only one way. But God said, hey, there's many levels and dimensions to me, so let me show you something.
Amen.
So that's been a big surprise to me.
Thank you, Pastor Greg. Pastor Chris, what about surprise? Anything surprise you?
I love that, because I think that's a great reminder to us. God doesn't need us to save people's lives. It's not about our preaching. It's not about our teaching. It's not about our programs. Faith comes by hearing of the word, and God changes people's lives. We get to be a tool in the story, and we get to be a part of the story.
Right.
And so that's really, I would echo that. I think a pleasant surprise was the faithfulness of God's people. Financially, when really, I'm sure most of us put a freeze on spending. It's like, whoa, I don't know where this is going. And so, so that, I think I would echo with Craig on that. I just think that's, been a pleasant surprise. Not that, that people would do that, but I think that was part of what I said last time we met about seeing the health of our church. People are faithful with stewardship. People are faithfully being discipled. tuning in to hunger for the word. I mean, not everybody, but, so those have been like really pleasant surprises. I think the thing on a personal level for me was a surprise was just in going into it, didn't realize how much uncertainty there would be every week. And just every week, and still is.
Yeah.
From the time we met last week, we met last week, I just found out we a couple of staff members have been exposed to somebody with COVID. You had called for me to come here. I was like, well, look, I don't think I have it, but I'm waiting on the test to come back. I don't want to put another brother in a dangerous spot. If anybody's uncomfortable, look, I know we're social distancing, but I'll stay away. And like, it's been like that every week. And so it's this constant reminder to me that I need to be before the Lord asking for discernment. Going to this point, it's like if you would say, what do you need as a leader? What do you, as of your family, at the church? I mean, it's this constant moment where just discernment. When I was younger, going back to Solomon, when he became the king after David, can you imagine? No. And he was a young man, and God said, I'll give you anything you want. And he says, give me wisdom. And one of my mentors said that idea of discernment was a heart with ears on it, that I could hear you. And that's been where I feel like I've had to stay, because every week there seems to be something that takes place that it just disrupts my hard plans.
Yeah.
And that's why we moved to the soft plans. It's because it's just been constant, even this week, because we're looking to reopen on Sunday. There's something's come up, and we just left the staff meeting. It's like, oh my gosh, let me pray. Let me,
Right.
Let's have a conversation. And so that, I don't think that I was mentally prepared going into it for that.
Amen. That's real.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, and that's what even you text me, I can't remember what day it was when you got your result. That's the realness of this thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're a pastor, you're leading people, but yet you yourself are living among the situation and trying to pastor not just people, but also yourself. And
we're not above.
there's nothing from heaven that says that you have been removed from this situation.
I want y'all to know I'm a leper.
That's what I mean, really. I mean, that's the realness of it. Like, you felt, and I told the other pastors when you shared that with me, I said, let me just say, to the character of Pastor Chris, he was honest enough to say, look, I don't think this has happened, but he wanted us to know that if there's anything that we felt like we need to keep ourselves safe, that he is willing to remove himself. And I thought, how real is that? We're trying to have a pastor's discussion on pastoring in the pandemic, and yet the pastor is going through it in his personal life. And that is amazing, that where we are today, that it's just as real. I don't care. It's as real right here as it is right out there. And that's kind of what we're doing. So, Pastor Ruben, is there anything that kind of out of this that you felt like maybe a surprise or caught, that you've learned through this?
Well, most definitely. I probably shouldn't have thought it, but, just knowing God is so much.
Hold that mic up.
Sorry. I'm learning that.
Hey, adjustments.
Yeah, adjustments. Just learning how, God is so much bigger than our systems, and he's bigger than our plans. And I do believe, even though this whole COVID deal, this pandemic, I know God is able to turn that thing around. But I know even in this, God is doing something bigger than our eyes can see. And that's where my hope comes from. That's where my encouragement comes from. And knowing that, we had our system in place, and God just threw them out the window. And he forced us to be at his feet. He forced us to hear daily direction, to say, what do I do today? Because I had soft plans, or I had hard plans for tomorrow, but this phone call I just got totally changed that. So every day, every moment is a God, lead me, guide me. And I'm truly feeling, I think that was Moses said, God, if you don't go with us, I don't want to go. And that's why I am. God, if you don't lead us in this, I know I can't do this by myself. But seeing how amazing he is. There he is seeing people saved and reaching people from different states and even different countries. And by little old us in Douglas, Georgia, who have a camera set up and we're teaching the word of God with a heart that loves God, trying to reach whoever we can reach. And he had somebody during the pandemic when the harvest was right that needed to hear that word that day. And they received salvation. Amen. So that makes me say, because, I probably quit every Sunday. I probably quit every Sunday, say, I don't know if this is for me.
Right.
Because, and I know y'all, our hearts say, I want to please God with everything in me. Amen. And sometimes I feel like I fall short so many times. Mm-hmm. But it is good when you hear somebody say, hey, I live in Jacksonville, Florida. Hey, I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I tuned in and I gave my life to Christ. Amen. That makes it say, you know what? I'm going to try this one more time. I'm gonna get out there and I'm gonna give it another shot. Kind of like playing golf, that on that last hole, you did a birdie. You like, I think I'm pretty good. I might try this again.
I'm coming back.
And that's the way it has been. It's been so encouraging to see that God is so much bigger than our systems, and he's doing some amazing things, and we just gotta trust him and what he's doing. He saw this coming. It never surprised him, right? And he's going to get the glory out of it.
Amen. That is awesome.
Yeah. Could I add another
yes, sir.
surprise?
Go ahead.
I don't know if this is an open discussion, but I don't want us to move on without me adding another surprise.
Oh, yeah.
Another surprise to me was some of the members that stepped up.
That's good.
That was unexpected.
Yeah.
I mean, it has been a huge surprise for me. Mm-hmm. Those who have been in the background and those who have been, just kind of in the corner, and they're now doing Sunday school and online, and now they're doing the Bible study classes, and and not taking away anything from the the reliable ones, but some of the reliable ones, they have other things going on. Like I said, this is a real thing, and they're having to deal with some real issues. Right. But to see the personnel and the staff members step up and start doing things in front of the camera. Yes. And, we have a private group where it's just for us. The prayer time, Sunday school, and now the Sunday school is going public. We're going to do that today, as a matter of fact. Well, by the time you see this, it'll be Wednesday. But to see the staff and the members step up, and you look at them like, hey, where'd that come from? Right. Like, where'd that come from?
Where's that?
Yeah, so I think not only are we changing as pastors, but we are seeing members changing and evolving and stepping up and doing things like, what, that is awesome. Yeah. And it gives you encouragement and hope as a pastor that, man, hey, we going somewhere.
Amen.
We're actually doing something. No. So I just had to give that shout out to the members who are really stepping up out of the shadows and really stepping up and taking on roles that they're normally uncomfortable with.
Man, I think that's so true. I think all of us, we've kind of, last week after we finished doing live on Wednesday night, it was amazing to me that we stayed to almost like 10 o'clock here in the sanctuary, and it was talking about the things that we've all been going through, but also all of you, and we were just talking about how we've seen people rise up in this, and how encouraging that is to have people that, even though we couldn't gather in our sanctuaries, there was a level of unity that was still established, and how blessed we are that in all of our churches, that the body of Christ, that Jesus established the church. At the end of the day, this is his church. And so we just get to be a part of what he has ordained. And so COVID can't destroy the church. We know that. This was God's idea for the body of Christ to be together. And so we know that the church is going to be able to push forward. But when we see that begin to happen in a time, boy, that makes a level of passion and excitement rise up. And so what a blessing we have to have so many great people in our churches. So we wanted to move in tonight and talk about reentry and what that looks like, and just going forward, what we may experience, some things that we can learn from each other. And last week we were going to get into this, and Pastor Chris had shed some light on something that he was going to use to kind of help lead his church. And so I'm going to ask you, Pastor Chris, to start off with that tonight. Just your analogy and how real that is with that, if you would.
So, I think that sometimes we have made this to be this litmus test for a person's spirituality. And I don't think really that's what it is, because like I said last week, I think we can err on being foolish, acting as if this is not real, and I think we can, be fearful, be driven by our fear, and not do what we should do before the Lord. And so I was thinking about how do I communicate that to our congregation. And actually the verse you put up here in 1 Corinthians 9 is the verse I use, that we become all things to all people in order to win them over to the gospel. And so what I wanted to communicate, for some reason, Archie has a traffic light in our church in the closet. And so I just started thinking about that traffic light, and I was thinking, we've got some people in our congregation, they're ready to come back. Matter of fact, about a week or two into this, and maybe even before we started, they were what I call green lighters. They're ready to go and just say the word, and they're going to be there. They are just moving out with a really strong faith. And so, so we want to meet them where they are. Then we knew that we would have some red lighters, some people who either are a health condition or age, put them at a higher risk. And so they needed to be very wise and really shelter in place to stay away from people. And then we knew that there would be some people who I call yellow lighters. They're not quite real sure, not real strong and ready to go, but also, depending on what kind of yellow light person you are, when you see the yellow light, do you slow down to take caution or do you speed up to get through? And so everybody's really on that spectrum. And so what I communicated with our church is we're beginning to reopen. Look, some of you are green lighters and you're ready to go. And we're going to meet you where you are. And so we're going to start on site. So we're going to be together. We're going to worship. This is how we do it. And so then we had red lighters. Look, say to them, look, right now, I know that you may not be in a place where you feel like you can come back. And we would advise some of you not to. We want you to keep the red light up and stay where you are because of your health situation, your age. So we want you to apply wisdom here. And so be a red lighter. There'll come a time when you can get back on site, but we're going to meet you online like we've been doing. And so therefore we'd have our own site, we'll have online going full blast on both. And then if you're yellow, it's okay to be where you are. We want you to pray about it. And like Craig said, apply wisdom on whether you need to be here or not, because this is not a litmus test of your spirituality. No. And so we want you to be in a place where the Lord is guiding you. This is no different from eating meat sacrificed to idols. For some of you, you're going to be able to do it. For some of you, you're not going to be able to do it. There's no judgment here. We want you to do what the Lord leads you to do. So if you're green light, come on this Sunday, we're meeting. If you're red light, hey, this is you need to be at home, join us online. And if you're yellow and you need to take a week, if you need to take a month of caution, do that. And so I really wanted, I call them grace pointers, to understand, look, seek the Lord on what you should do and follow him. And we're going to meet you where you are. Because I think that's really, isn't that what our church, that's what we're supposed to do, meet people where they are. Amen. And so not everybody's going to agree. I mean, because with everything going on in our nation right now, there's a lot of division. Mm-hmm. And we can meet people where they are if we use wisdom as leaders in the church.
That's good.
So amen. Well, thank you. Pastor Reuben, I know that you're probably in the planning process as we are about coming back. What are some thoughts you have on reentry, and just maybe for your church, or what you'd like to share as this experience about reentry for you as a leader for your church?
Yes, sir. Of course, I think we mentioned it we mentioned it last time. Every church dynamic is different, and we have the responsibility as shepherds of the church that we cover to know your sheep, know what they've dealt with, know even fears, concerns, things of that matter. And I know for us, it has touched us maybe differently than some others have. And for that reason, we haven't moved as fast in some areas because, of course, I mean, when you look, for those that may not know, I pastor predominantly African-American church, and the numbers have been so disproportional as far as those have been affected by COVID-19. Right. And so, with it being real, actually losing a member that was a part of the church, other people having family members that they lost because of it, there have been people that have really been really hesitant about it. And so prayerfully seeking, what should we do? There again, with the dynamics of the church, depends upon the size of your church. you may have the flexibility to move a little quicker than others because you have more area to spread people out. One of the things we may not have if everybody came back, 100%, we wouldn't have that room to really give people that area to space them out. So we've moved, I guess, more on the back end, more of a slower process with that. We've did an outside service, which was awesome. And we simply, we called it Pull Up and Praise. And we actually had an outside service where simply we were out in the middle of a field and we pulled up a flatbed trailer and hooked up some speakers and instruments. And we just had church, cars separated. You can stand around your car, you can run around your car, but don't go any further than that. And it was so well received by the people because they missed that fellowship. And we missed that fellowship, but we must move with wisdom going forward. And so now after talking with, that's why I think it's vitally important for pastors to talk to one another, and we can glean from one another. And if pastors carrying the spirit of competition right now, please kill that spirit. This ain't the time. This ain't the time to be trying to flex and show we're bigger or better, or have more faith. This is a time to glean from one another. And so I've been praying about how we should move. And after hearing Pastor Chris the other day, that gave me an idea of what can we do concerning coming back. And I started with our ministers first. And I actually did the red light, green light, yellow light with our ministers to see where they were, because they're going to be the ones up. They're going to be the ones interacting with the people to kind of feel them out. And it was that same conversation. How do you feel? This is no pressure. I just need an assessment going forward on where you stand, because as we start reintroducing people back into the ministry, I want to start with our leaders and ministers, because I want them to be at a place of comfort so that they can serve the people that are coming in. And so as of now, the verdict is still out. We did have several, we probably have more yellow lights than green right now. And that's perfectly fine, but it gives us an idea on how to move forward as a ministry. So I think we will probably be on the back end of things concerning going in versus one of the first ones, simply because of the dynamics of our church. So there again, it is not because we think we deeper. It's not because we're fearful. I support what other pastors are doing because I understand why they're doing it. But for us, it's, knowing the dynamics, I'm held responsible to make sure that they're, concerning greater destiny. Amen. And make sure that they're good. So, but we're slowly doing that process, met with leaders. Then we're going to start doing some of our members and kind of filling that out and just take it one step at a time. So there is no date that we're going back in as of now, but that we know that we could just say on this calendar we're looking to go in. We're just kind of feeling our way through it at the time.
And I think what you said is so personal, because your church has been, personally affected by this. Some churches, have not felt that case where you had a member. And so that does make your reentry look much different than everybody, because you had families that were affected by that. And so I think, like you said last week, we are in unity. But it's not going to always look like a uniform, like, hey, you got to do it X, Y, Z. Right. And if you don't do it X, Y, Z, your faith is less or whatever's going on in your life. I think that would be such small-minded thinking, just to think that anybody has to do it exactly the same way, because it has affected churches different. And so I think, to be honest with everybody watching, I talked to Pastor Reuben because I felt like his story with his church was so real. People needed to hear that from the heart of a pastor, that, man, when this hits your church, hey, it affects everybody. Yeah. And so I really appreciate you sharing that side. That is a powerful testimony of what reentry will look like. And there's nothing wrong with that. By all means, you're being a great shepherd for your church. And we have to look at each church and decide what is best for our flock for doing that.
And I was one pastor, Bob, that I want to get back. Yes. I want everybody to be back. And, we had that idea because I didn't think it was going to last this long. Honestly, I thought we had this idea we're going to be shut down for a little while and they were going to open back up, and we're just going to all rush back in there and there ain't going to be space for any of us to be in. We were looking forward to that, but that's not the reality of it. That won't happen. And I think we don't know that maybe at the end of this year, some people still,
that's right,
are unsure about it. And we've got to be patient. Like it says, be there for them, and whatever we need to do as leaders, do that and not put demands on people to return.
I think that's wise. Yeah. Pastor Craig, what reentry what are you thinking for your church, and what's some things that maybe you've gleaned or you would like to share about reentry for your church?
Yes. First of all, I would just say, before I get into the actual steps that we're taking, is it's not an issue of being deep or spiritual. It's more being responsible.
Amen.
So what we have done, and like Pastor Chris, you started this phrase, soft plans. So our soft plans originally were to go back into the sanctuary on, I think it was this past Sunday. That was supposed to be our soft reopening. But what we did is we checked the pulse of the members. We evaluated the members, and we were getting some feedback from them. And we found out that those plans that we had would not be sufficient enough, because we're one of those churches that, first and foremost, we are also an African-American church predominantly, and also we're a smaller church. And our sanctuary also has pews. So by the time we sectioned everything off and had everything properly distanced and spaced out, it would hold only about 25 people. Mm-hmm. So now you run into another problem. Who comes and who doesn't come?
Right.
So now, and I started getting phone calls, well, Pastor, my wife and I would just stay home. We really want to come, but we'll just let somebody else. And then you start getting 4 or 5 of those phone calls. And then you start feeling bad. Okay, we need to change these plans.
Right.
We need to change it, because I don't want to be the one to tell somebody, well, we don't have enough room for you.
Right.
So we did have another option. So what we did, we relocated to our other property. We just happened to have an outside pavilion. So what we decided to do was just offer more opportunities. Mm-hmm. So we had to do a little bit of spending. So we put services out, internet services out there, some other things that we implemented out there to where we could also have an outside service. Mm-hmm. We also had space where if you wanted to get out of your vehicle, we had a section for you that was spaced out. If you want to feel like you were sort of in church,
I got you.
We had a few people that did that.
Yeah.
So we had a little church section over here. We had people in the cars back there, and some people tailgated a little bit, and some people still watched it live. So we still had it set up with the sound and everything so they could watch it live. And it worked out great, because like you said, everybody's not going to feel the same. Red light, green lighters, yellow lighters. So it was a way that we could in some way accommodate everyone where they are. Like you said, you got to meet them where they are. So that was best for us. So we gave them an option. We gave them options. Some people didn't get out of their cars. I got to add this. Some people stayed in the cars with the window rolled up and the air on, and they still watched it live.
Yeah. But they were there.
But they were in the car,
right.
And they had their phones watching it live. Mm-hmm. So those options made it a success for us. So you just got to be creative, and you got to evaluate your congregation. Like I said, it's not about necessarily a right or wrong thing. It's what's best for your church. Mm-hmm. You got to properly evaluate. You can't always evaluate what someone else is doing. You can glean off of what they're doing.
That's right.
But that church is not my church. So I need to look at us, because I look at this thing, you have chairs, and somebody out there may have pews.
That's right.
A smaller church or whatever the case may be. But for us, that is what worked. It was just more of a responsible decision. We still don't have a date.
Yeah.
We still don't have a date where we're going back into the sanctuary. So right now we're going to do the same thing again this coming Sunday. Matter of fact, they requested that.
I got you.
Because
Well,
there was
that's
a lot of options. So that's where we are right now, and we're just taking it day by day.
I understand.
I was going to say, going back to soft plans, so like we had dates and we've had to move them. We didn't make them public, but, we had target dates, which I'm sure you guys did. And here's a question for you, because you're kind of asking us, but you've been meeting for a couple of weeks. How's that going? And, you and I talked on the phone. I was like, what are y'all doing? Right. Because you're a little bit ahead of us in that. So I'm like, hey, what can we learn? And, how are you doing the seating? Because, our situation's similar, building-wise. And, so how's that going?
Well, to be real with you, it's been a learning process for us. We have come back. My thought process to begin was, like, you had filled out your members and everything. You have to get people's mindset before they're even going to be here physically. You got to know where their mindset was. And so then I began to kind of take it from the parking lot into the church to decide, if I was coming in, what would my mindset need to be safe? And so what we began the first Sunday, and a lot of people said, when you're looking at this situation, I'm thinking, can you be too guarded? And so I met with our leaders, And my whole thinking was, if I was coming in, and like we've been using the word red lighter, if I was a red lighter coming in on a Sunday and I decided I'm getting up and I'm coming to church, what that looks like. But when I get there, what they see is going to determine about if they want to come back. And so I began to think, what does that need to look like? So we started in the parking lot. We put cones out 6 feet apart because between the parking lot, we have a foyer, and then we come into the sanctuary. Well, as people are coming in, in the foyer, they could get bottlenecked, and there wouldn't be 6 feet of distance. And I'm thinking, well, somebody might get in that area and feel like, man, I feel unsafe at that moment. So we kind of spaced people out beginning, and then this is how it worked for us. And I'm not saying this is going to work for everybody else, but I felt like if we could come up with a way to know ahead of time to some degree who was coming, we could apply distancing in the sanctuary. So during this pandemic, we didn't even have online giving at the beginning of this. I've been dragging my feet. I'm the turtle in the race, okay? I'm probably not going to be the jackrabbit. I'm not sprinting out. Sometimes they cut up and tell me I'm a billy goat. They got to drag me to water. I mean, so I've been slow on that. But in a hurry, we became really fast. So it turned out that the giving app that we had a way that you could have people to text in, and they could let us know. We started with 2 services. That was another thing. We had a 9 a.m. service and an 11 a.m. service. That way we could get the most amount of people in to whatever service they wanted to come. So we just asked people, if you could tell us ahead of time and text us and let us know what service you're coming to, and then how many people are coming with you. And so we designed a seating chart in the sanctuary, and we laid out. So if you had a family of 5, we knew that those people were going to be there and those people were going to be there. And to me, that was really, really helpful to apply social distancing in the church. And so now we have people every week. They text in how many people that they're coming and whatever service. And so that way we would be able to apply. Well, if we got 5 here, we know we're going to need spacing over here to do that. And so that was really helpful to us to be able to have almost a seating chart. Not that we're assigning people where they have to seat, but if people want to be safe, this is a great way to do it. And so we assigned seating, but then we left sections where if people just showed up and didn't text us, we were able to seat whoever came. We didn't want anybody to feel like they couldn't come in. And so I would say that was one of the greatest things we did was have people text in and have them lay out how many people's going to be with them for our bathrooms. I'm just being real with y'all. Those are the things that we had to look at. What do you do with bathrooms? Because that's an area where people could get bottled up and be without 6 feet of distancing. So we just tried to have people, greeters, and we would just have them almost, if somebody, was in there or around the bathroom area, we try to station people out there to help them know, hey, there's people already in there. Not that we're trying to control anything. We're just trying to keep people safe. And so we had people in that area, people greeting. We had people in the foyer. And then what we would do is we had a plan that when they came into the foyer, we had people at each section, and we would just have those people walk them down, show them where their seat was. And so when they came in, our hope was that no matter where you are where you feel safety-wise, that you leave that service feeling like, okay, I can do this again. And that was really the blessing for us. And we've had people of all ages come in, even with, maybe even health concerns in their own life, not necessarily COVID, but just other health concerns. And I've tried to question them afterwards just to tell me, did you feel safe? Because at the end of the day, if people do not feel safe, they're not coming back. Mm-hmm. And so whatever safe environment that we can plan, that's what we do. And so we probably were overboard on the first side of this, just being real with you. I felt like, man, we're so guarded. Nobody's coming because we make them feel like they're coming like a camp or something. But at the end of the day, we've been blessed. I feel like we've been able to have church. And like you said, I think every church is different. Having chairs did help us. But with pews, you got to think it changes that plan. And we're all right now fluid in what those plans look like. And now I'll say doing 2 services was sometimes challenging. You want to keep that passion preaching, both of them, and you walk in here to that 9 a.m. service and you lay it, you feel like, but I thought some of them was probably thinking sometimes, man, this man ain't preached to people in a while. Like, whoa, brother, we hear you. So having that, and then if you do 2 services, we had a team come in between the services, sanitize the whole sanctuary, sanitize all the handles, anything that people may have put their hands on. We wanted to sanitize that, so we space it out with an hour difference. And so those are some of the things that we've done. Praise team, you do 2 services, you got to think about, that means a praise team may be getting here very early, or worship team, choir, whatever, getting here really early and having to stay through the second service as well. And so all of those things are things that we have navigated through. And I think, I wouldn't say we got it all figured out, but I think we do. By having somewhat of a plan, it has helped us to move forward. And our hope is that we can continue and continue to be able to come in, and we'll just see what that goes forward. But even now, let's just be real. It's still fluid. It is what it is. We don't know what's going to come up. I remember in this process thinking, I remember one week I thought, man, I got this great plan figured out. And then the governor came out and put a state of emergency in. I thought, well, just rip that up. It's all good. It doesn't matter. And so we really, at this point in our life, in church life, we have to be willing as pastors and members to realize that we have not been through this before. And our hope is that we never go through this again. Mm-hmm. But while we're in it, we are still the body of Christ. And if there's one thing, I thank all of you today, just in your heart in pastoring, because, there's just been days where it's been really hard. And I've watched all of you, and I appreciate your ministries. I do. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. And let me say this. I think for Douglas, Georgia, to have people like you you could go all over the world and not find some of the great men of God churches that we have right here in Douglas, Georgia. And so I thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for coming and being with us, because, I think it's going forward. There's serious situations in our world right now in the United States, and it's going to take more churches, that are willing to sit down and talk the realness of what's going on, to show this world that we are different, not because we're better, but because we believe that Jesus Christ is the answer for whatever problem this world has. And for us as pastors, Jesus is the answer. And we have to go through that. So thank you. I want to say thank you so much for coming and doing this with us. And I wanted, we've been very serious over the last 2 nights. I wanted to go through and just let people see the real side of maybe the other side of pastoring, okay? And so we've got these, we call them lightning round questions. And so I want to just ask you, I felt like I was eating every day, 10 meals a day. So I was just curious, have you gained or lost any weight during the quarantine? I don't hate to call anybody out, so let me just start with me. I have gained weight. If you're watching this, the camera, let me say, the first time I saw myself on camera, I thought, who is that guy? He better get on the Slim Fast program. There ain't no skinny jeans on me. It was bad. So I have gained weight during the quarantine, but I'm trying to do better. So how about y'all? How have you done during the quarantine?
Well, let me just say this. They say the camera adds 10 pounds. The camera didn't do this. Okay, let me just go ahead and tell you, the camera didn't do this. This is all my doing, and then some. So I added 10 on top of the 10 that the camera adds. But yes, I definitely gained some. And I'm one of those pastors that's bivocational, so I'm on furlough, so that adds another dynamic to it. So, and with the gyms being closed, Pastor Chris, I normally hit the gym when I can, or run when I can, but haven't been doing that either.
Confession time.
It's confession time.
Right.
It's confession time. So, but I've been a little slack in that area.
I'll add, for me, I've gained probably about 5 to 8 pounds, but I had lost before down to probably the lowest weight I'd been in a long time. And so, but like being at home that much, just, Netflix binge watching. And, I found out they have Oreo Thins. And so you can eat a lot more of them, but because they're thin, you feel like you're not getting as many calories. And they're not keto friendly. That's why I was keto dieting. And so, but a good thing for me is, Trish and I have been able to exercise more. We've been riding our bike. Reuben and I live in the same neighborhood. I don't know if he's seen me scooting around. He usually sees my boys out there running. He don't see me out there running. But so, in the process, I've been saying between gaining 5 to 10. I think, I don't know about for you guys, but for me, when I'm on a schedule during the week, I'm going to eat better. When, you're sheltered in place, I'm out of schedule, I'm at the house, I know it's there, because I don't bring all that stuff to church, put it in the office, because it'll get in my mouth if I do that.
Right.
So that's where I've been on that.
Amen. Amen.
So I feel like this question was for me. I was hoping we'll miss this one out. Actually, I think early on I gained some, and I checked this morning, and if God is my witness, I came back down to where I was before the pandemic.
I got you.
But that still ain't where I need to be. But anyway, I did come down some there. But you're right. You look at yourself on camera and like, I don't need to eat anything else. And so the way he found the thin Oreos, I found a double stuffed one. And they're really good with milk at like 9 o'clock, and it's just not good. So, and one thing, honestly, we've been able to do as a family, this pandemic has slowed us down from moving. Like, my wife's job, when they were out of school, so she was home. My son was home from college. I was there when we were sheltered in. And one thing we found joy in was like what we're eating for supper. Like we would like do different meals and enjoy that moment eating together. I think we were able to put on some pounds. And then you have the leftovers from that, and but we're doing better. We're doing better. We walked the neighborhood, and I felt bad. I think we were on our way back from Zaxby's the other night. And we were coming into the neighborhood, and there's this gentleman on a bicycle, and he was riding, and he was really getting it in. And I pulled up beside it was Pastor Chris, and I felt so bad because I had Zaxby's in the car, and he was checking his watch, checking his time, and I was just like, we're about to eat Zaxby's. But it's been a process, but we're working at it.
Amen.
Hey, you go ride your bike so you can eat the Zaxby's later.
Right. That's right.
Okay.
Ride to eat.
Balance out. I tell you about the camera. For me, Trish was like, I want you to, grow out your beard a little bit. And I'm like, man, I got a gray beard. And so that's me, that old guy speaking. So, the camera changes a lot of things.
It changes a lot of things. I didn't know if there was I've got my own story, so this question is probably related to me more than anybody, but did you have your biggest social media fail since the pandemic hit? Was there anything that you did on social media that you look back and you go, I can't believe that or whatever that looked like for you? So I'm going to share mine and that give you a moment to think. So we were doing drive-in church, and drive-in church, we had the stage, and we were filming that with a phone. We put it up in front, right there in front of the stage, and we were getting ready to start, and I didn't realize that the service had started on the phone. We were showing kind of the pre-service. The stage is up there, and they had already turned the live on. And literally, I walked in front of the camera, and I started like clapping and dancing. You can't see anything but from like my neck down. And finally, somebody's coming over there and telling me like, Pastor, we're live. And so anyway, you learn, hey, where the camera, you better pay attention. If the record button's on, it's on, and the world is watching. So that was for any other thing you may have had during that time.
Yeah, we had so Good Friday. I decided. Because I've been wanting to do a Good Friday service, but we do that massive Easter in the city at the Martin Center, so it takes a lot of our energy, and so I didn't want to do 2 nights, a Friday night, and turn around and do that. So I decided, hey, we're online. We're not doing Easter in the city because we're doing it online, so let's do a Good Friday. So what I was planning on to do at the Martin, I was actually going to bring in some sheep, some lambs, because I wanted to talk about the sacrifice of Jesus and almost go into where I was pretending like I was going to, sacrifice one. Mm-hmm. Because I was thinking, we live kind of in a sanitized culture where, slitting that lamb's throat would make it real quick.
That's right.
Yeah, and so I started looking for lambs, and this is just a funny conversation. So I had a guy in my church had a lamb. I'm like, yo, you think you could bring him? Number one, a year-old lamb is huge. He was like 300 pounds. No, it was 300. It was 180. It was big, and so I was like, and then he said, and this will probably help you guys. Like, yeah. So he goes, my wife told me this is a week before, says, hey, she says I need to tell you this. Our lambs are black. And I was like, yeah, you need to tell me that because everybody thinks it's a white lamb. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that now. Then you throw it on me. And so I said, so we started talking. So I brought these two lambs up on stage and I'm trying to think of their names. I can't remember their names, but they get up on stage with me, and they start pooping. Like, one of them's got the runs big, and the other one is solid, which is not as bad. And so they're up there with me, and I'm talking about them, petting them, and then they exit. I mean, there's diarrhea all up there, and so then you're trying to talk to the camera, but you don't want to step in it. I got on white shoes, and so I'm like, it's not a good situation. So that was my tough social media moment, one of the many. So,
Yes.
But it was like,
That's real.
That's just the real stuff that you deal with. I'm just like, in our country right now, it's just like with the color thing. I don't want to get into that at all. And so I was like, y'all ain't just got the normal one that's posted. And so, but I learned, there are a lot of different colors from brown to gray. I was like, just I'd never thought about it.
Yeah,
So
you can't script what those sheep were doing right there in front of you.
yeah. You can't screw what people are going to do either.
No, not at all.
So it was
Not at all.
crazy.
Well, we're going to finish up. I want to ask, sports. I think we all watch sports. We talked about it off camera. So not a lot of sports going on. So is there something maybe that you have been watching during this time where you couldn't watch sports? So was there something different you might have watched, Pastor Ruben, or during this time?
I've just been finding different series, I guess, that I've been missing that's been on, like, say, Netflix and some of those. And you find yourself, starting watching it from one series to the other. And my wife has gotten on a few of them, and I find myself jumping in with some of those I thought I would never watch. And now we're watching those series together. So I find myself doing that more. And anything sports-wise that came on. I think we were talking last week, the cornhole competition was on. And I found myself locked into that. And I really give those guys credit because I didn't even know that was like a sport that had made it to that level and that people were so talented doing it. I mean, I watched that. So anything sports-wise, we watched a few old football games and things like that. So that's what we've been doing, kind of staying entertained.
What about Pastor Craig? What you found yourself watching maybe when you couldn't watch sports?
Yeah, my Netflix account is booming. So just happened to have this conversation with my brother the other day, and I find myself watching anything, including bad movies. And I'll say low budget. We call them low budget. So I watch a low budget movie, and I find myself watching the entire thing, and I just sit there and complain about it. Eating.
Yeah.
This is terrible. Oh, that's awful. And my wife say, hey, I need you to come here and do something. Wait a minute, I'm watching this terrible movie. Hold on. This is awful. This is terrible. So I'm finding myself watching anything, just whatever comes on, good, bad, whatever.
I got you.
So, I'm critiquing it and just eating and telling how bad it is.
But still watch it.
Still watch it.
Still watch
Just
it.
watching anything.
What about Pastor Chris?
Yeah, I was a big sports fan too, so it's been a drought. I saw they had rock skipping championship on there the other day. I was like, I ain't stooping to that yet. So, but I think we've got to finish some shows. There were shows that we had started a while ago, either DVR or Netflix, that we kind of had been dating, and then we broke up with for a while, and then went back to kind of thing. And so we kind of did the same thing everybody else did, just try to catch up on some and start some new ones. And And there are a lot of bad movies out. A lot of bad movies. A lot more bad movies than there are good movies. So, and so, just doing it, same thing everybody else is really.
For me, the only thing that I like, because I love basketball, I grew up, in the 80s. So when I heard that the Last Dance was coming out, the Michael Jordan documentary, now, I had to watch, they had one part that was, and I pray for some of them guys, they need, Jesus for sure. But, for you watching tonight, maybe you saw some of that in that generation and you talked about today's player and how good they were. Maybe you saw in that who the real greatest of all time is.
That's our age right there.
Hey, I get the microphone today, and so you may be watching and you talk about whoever, but I am glad for this generation to see that Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time, and somebody's going to be hating
So
on
y'all
this.
been having an argument with your kids about this?
No.
LeBron James? Or,
LeBron, MJ. I'm like, every time they would show something, I would look at my son and say, did you see that? Did you? That's the GOAT right there.
How many rings he got?
Oh my. So anyway, because I have some kids in our church, and they hear me talking about Michael Jordan and just all those years, and I think that was a great era. And for them, they have never seen some of that stuff, and so
Hey, there's stuff in that, because I'm like in episode 8 now. And there's stuff you like, I don't remember that happening. And you're like, that's interesting.
It is. I mean, so anyway, you're watching. Hey, I just want to say that Michael Jordan, dropped the mic. It's over with. So anyway, but no, that's been a lot of fun. But hey, guys, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you coming. And I hope that if you've watched this over the last couple of weeks, it's just the heart of pastors, and we appreciate your input. Thank you for watching, and our blessing is for your church to prosper in this time. The kingdom of God is going to continue to move forward, and we just appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you for watching tonight. God bless. We appreciate you watching the last 2 weeks of pastoring during the pandemic. I want to give a special thanks to all those pastors that were able to participate with us, Pastor Reuben, Pastor Craig, Pastor Chris, Pastor Matt, Pastor Willie, and just thank them for taking time out of their busy schedule to be with us. And let me just say, you saw on the last night that Pastor Willie and Pastor Matt were not able to be with us. They were pastoring during the pandemic. They had some things come up and just wasn't able to be with us. But I just appreciate all the pastors and what they gave during this time, and just hope that it provided some insight. So we hope to be able to bring you some things in the future as we join together, all our churches together. We're all in this together, the body of Christ. So thank you for watching.